$2 million. Despite Barney's insistence, the pirate refuses to budge. This irks Gunner, whose temper snaps. Barney attempts to calm him, but Gunner pulls the trigger, dispatching the pirate chief and setting off a chaotic shootout. In the frenzy, the Expendables launch smoke grenades, plunge the surroundings into darkness, and don their night vision goggles. They descend via ropes, eager to free the hostages, but are stalled as a pirate fires up a generator. In spite of their clear advantage, Barney offers the pirates a final chance. Their stubborn refusal earns them a lethal response. Barney eliminates them all with his gunfire. Just as the team is about to free the hostages, Gunner, plagued by twisted thoughts, threatens to hang a pirate. Barney attempts to reason with him, but to no avail. In a twist of events, Young confronts Gunner physically, but Barney steps in, forcing Gunner at gunpoint to release Young. Gunner's unsettling behavior and psychological instability lead to a difficult decision for Barney. He has no choice but to dismiss Gunner from the team. As darkness falls, Lee finds himself confronting the bitter truth that his partner, Lacey, has moved on. In the meantime, Barney connects with Tool, the jack-of-all-trades of the Expendables, serving as the recruitment liaison and weapons dealer. As Tool is giving Barney's back tattoo a final touch, Lee joins them. A playful challenge leads to a dart game, which Lee, surprisingly, loses. For a man who has never tasted defeat at the game, it's a concerning sign. On another front, on Valena Island, a truck packed with soldiers arrives at a palace, bringing along accused traitors from the town. General Garza faces them down a tunnel, accusing them of theft. Despite the pleas and protestations of their innocence, Garza remains unconvinced. Suddenly, a trigger is pulled, and one of the accused falls, killed by a man dressed in an immaculate suit, James Monroe. Monroe prompts Garza to execute the rest to command respect from his men. With visible reluctance, Garza complies. Meanwhile, Barney connects with a mysterious client known only as Mr. Church and crosses paths with an old acquaintance and rival mercenary, Trench. Church pitches a mission to topple the ruthless dictator General Garza ruling over the island of Valena in the Gulf of Mexico. Trench, preoccupied with his own affairs, nudges the job towards Barney. Sensing that others have declined the high-risk mission, Barney pushes for a $5 million price tag, demanding half upfront and the rest deposited in an offshore account. Church agrees but threatens Barney with dire consequences if the job is botched. Back at their hideout, Barney begins to study Valena with his map. Gunner then interrupts, pleading to stay on the team and swearing his competence, but Barney holds firm, citing Gunner's drug habits. Agitated, Gunner walks away with a threat which Barney just shrugs off. That night, Barney briefs his team about their Valena mission, and soon they land on the island's beautiful coast. Barney and Lee secure their massive plane at the port, bluffing to the guards about being wildlife researchers transporting injured animals with their fake passports. Turns out Gunner managed to sneak his way on board the craft and leaves without anyone knowing. Barney and Lee lay low as the army rolls in, but secretly, Lee films the brutal crackdown on the locals by the army. At the local hangout, they rendezvous with Church's contact, Sandra. As she drives them around, Sandra talks about Valena's past beauty before Garza's corrupt reign and a mysterious American turned it into a nightmare. Despite her parents' death and the ensuing chaos, she holds on to hope for a better future. Curious, Barney requests Sandra to drive closer to the palace for a better view, and she hesitatingly agrees. Stepping out near the palace, Lee hops off the truck, eager to soak in the sights from a unique perspective. Not far behind, Sandra and Barney pull up, adding to the ensemble. In the midst of this grandeur, Barney grows suspicious, confronting Sandra about her potential to be setting them up. Sandra denies it, making it clear that her sole mission is to help the suffering people of Valena. Barney warns her that Valena is a lost cause, and unexpectedly, an interruption comes in the form of a truck full of General Garza's soldiers. One of the brutish soldiers grabs Sandra, reminding her that even a general's daughter can face the gun's barrel for breaking the rules. He hauls Sandra towards their vehicle, a move that's met with swift retaliation. Lee, the unassuming hero, steps in. The distraction provided by his intervention allows Barney to take down his adversaries. Then the spotlight swings to Lee, who showcases his combat skills, sending one enemy after another to bite the dust. The man holding Sandra becomes Lee's next target as Barney neutralizes the last enemy soldier with his bullets just whizzing past Lee's head, who gives him a tell-off. Without wasting a moment, they hit the road, speeding off just as Monroe and his henchmen get wind of the chaotic scene that unfolded at the palace. Within a blink, they're at the port, and Barney starts doling out orders. He tells Lee to whisk Sandra onto the plane and lay low while he tackles Monroe and his goons. Lee obliges, opening the plane door for Sandra, but she stands her ground, refusing to board. Insisting that her place is in Valena, she chooses to stay. With no room for negotiation, Lee relents, letting her go and starting up the aircraft. As Garza's guards aim their guns at the plane, Barney makes a timely entrance, beating them to the draw. Meanwhile, Sandra finds refuge in her truck as Monroe charges past her, fixated on halting Barney's escape. With clockwork precision, Lee steers the plane away from the port. Barney, in a race against time, sprints towards the fleeing aircraft. He takes a leap off the port, gripping onto the plane just as a hailstorm of bullets from Monroe's men comes his way. Despite the onslaught, Barney hauls himself into the plane. He's met with the news from Lee Sandra has chosen to stay behind in Villena. This isn't part of their plan, but Barney takes it in stride. He takes the controls, steering the plane back towards the port as Lee gears up. The moment the port comes into view, Lee launches his counterattack, showering Monroe and his men with a barrage of bullets from the plane. Barney follows up, dousing them with what seems to be gasoline. Before the goons can put two and two together, Lee pulls the trigger, igniting a massive explosion. Monroe and his closest henchmen narrowly escape the fiery death, diving into the water. The rest aren't so lucky, becoming casualties of the cataclysmic blast. As darkness descends on the palace, a confrontation brews between Monroe and Garza. The bone of contention: Sandra, Garza's daughter, who aided Barney and Lee. Despite being outnumbered and outgunned, the twosome successfully breached security, wiped out 41 soldiers, and escaped scot-free. Monroe doesn't hold back, threatening that even Garza's daughter won't get a free pass if she crosses him again. As Garza exits Monroe's office, a new ally makes an entrance. A deal is struck between Monroe and Gunner for the hefty sum of $100,000 that very night. Meanwhile, Barney uncovers that their employer, Church, is a front for the CIA. They've been roped in to take down an ex-CIA operative, none other than Monroe himself. It turns out Monroe's avarice led him to partner with Garza, hogging the drug operations all to themselves. Monroe secures Garza's reign by instilling fear among the townsfolk. Unraveling these threads, Barney lays out the discoveries before Lee and Yang. The trio find themselves in agreement, deciding to call off the deal they were roped into. Later that night, Barney seeks out Toole, wrestling with his thoughts. Sandra's bravery and unwavering dedication to Villena keep replaying in his mind, leaving him unsettled. Instead of doling out a straightforward answer, Toole takes Barney down memory lane, recounting a haunting incident from the Bosnian War. He reveals his guilt about not preventing a woman's death, an event that left permanent scars on his soul. His story suggests that women can go to great lengths, sacrificing everything, even their lives, to safeguard those they hold dear. Simultaneously, Sandra is taken captive by Monroe's henchmen. Monroe grills her about the purpose of the Americans' visit to the island, but Garza steps in, ready to berate Sandra, but she fires back, asserting he might as well kill her, considering he's almost eradicated everyone on the island. Not missing a beat, Monroe's men step in, resorting to waterboarding to make Sandra spill the beans about the Americans' objective on the island. When their efforts yield no fruit, they switch gears, keeping Sandra as a hostage instead. The following day, Barney makes a resolute decision. He's going back to Villena to rescue Sandra. This decision, however, doesn't sit well with Lee, sparking a heated argument. Meanwhile, Yang, with a fire in his eyes, insists on accompanying Barney despite his objections. On the journey, Yang speaks his mind. He feels overworked and underpaid. His smaller stature, he says, makes fighting taller, bigger guys a grueling task, often leaving him with serious injuries. Their journey takes an unexpected turn when they're ambushed by Gunner and a squad of Monroe's men at a traffic stop. Thankfully, they're in a bulletproof car, and the ambush swiftly spirals into a high-stakes car chase. Barney handles the wheel, weaving through the chaos, while Yang steps out, exchanging gunfire with Gunner. The adrenaline-fueled chase culminates in an abandoned warehouse, setting the stage for round 2 of Yang vs. Gunner. Yang cleverly leverages the low-ceiling warehouse, using it to land attacks on Gunner, who keeps banging his head. But Yang's momentum eventually slows down, and Gunner seizes the opportunity to strike back. He lifts Yang up, but Barney intervenes just in time, shooting Gunner. The bullet lands just above his heart, leaving him severely wounded. As Gunner gasps for breath, Barney relentlessly probes him about who sent him. Gunner musters the strength to whisper a response into Barney's ear. Following the tense showdown, Barney and Yang return to the plane, greeted by the rest of the Expendables, Lee included. They may not agree with Barney's decision, but their bond runs deep, and he's still their comrade. That same day, the team takes off for Villena, soaring high in their massive plane. En route, Barney confides in Lee. Gunner, before his fall, had provided critical intel, the blueprint of Garza's palace. With this knowledge, the team descends on Villena, quickly mobilizing to strike at the palace. Meanwhile, Garza boldly breaks ties with Monroe. He accuses Monroe of hiring the Expendables because he couldn't control Garza. When that failed, he resorted to using and torturing Sandra. An enraged Garza issues an ultimatum: return his daughter or face death. As this tense exchange plays out, the Expendables breach Garza's palace. Lee, Yang, Caesar, and Toll systematically plant explosives throughout the complex, targeting the drug storage among other places. Meanwhile, Sandra fights bravely against two of Monroe's men with her hands tied, but she refuses to go down without a fight. Just in the nick of time, Barney bursts in, taking down the men with Gunner's blade. After releasing Sandra from her constraints, he calms her before making an exit from her cell. But their escape doesn't go as planned. They are cornered by more of Monroe's men, including his top henchman. In the ensuing chaos, Sandra is whisked away, and Barney is left at the mercy of a soldier who chokes him. Monroe's main man joins in, beating Barney mercilessly while demanding the number of men he has around the palace. Barney, however, doesn't say a word. Just when things look dire, the other Expendables storm in, launching a rescue mission for their leader. Yang and Lee work in tandem to take down one of Monroe's main men. Barney grapples with his torturer, and we see some incredible skills and weapons usage to take down their assailants. At this moment, the enemy glimpses Caesar making short work of Monroe's men with his impressive arsenal. Fear overtakes him, and he retreats. Upon opening the palace's main gate, the Expendables find themselves facing a horde of Garza's soldiers. They promptly retreat, and Garza seizes this moment to demand their surrender, knowing they're cornered and outgunned. In an inspiring speech to his soldiers and the townspeople, Garza apologizes for his blindness and greed. He pledges to rid Villena of the American menace, but his speech is abruptly cut short by Monroe shooting him down and swiftly making his exit with Sandra and his henchmen, heading towards a getaway helicopter. Garza's fall triggers a barrage of gunfire from his soldiers towards the Expendables. As the bullets fly, Barney's comrades urge him to blow up the building, but he refuses until he knows Sandra is safe. The moment Lee confirms Sandra's exit, Barney triggers the explosives, leveling the palace and disrupting the onslaught. Emerging victorious from the ruins, the Expendables launch an offensive on the remaining soldiers in the compound, overpowering them with their formidable skills and arsenal. Barney, undeterred, races after Monroe and his right-hand man for a final showdown. Toll and Lee jump into the fray, engulfing the main man in flames and effectively taking him down. Barney and Caesar, in an impressive show of firepower, obliterate the helicopter that was meant to be Monroe's escape route. Cornered, Monroe resorts to holding Sandra as a shield, trying to draw parallels between himself and Barney, portraying them both as mercenaries, dead inside. He can't comprehend Barney's motivations for pursuing him. Barney retorts that it was never about Monroe, but about saving Sandra. Without further ado, Barney draws his gun and fires at Monroe, landing shot after shot. The final blow comes from Lee, who thrusts a blade into Monroe, sealing his fate. As dawn breaks, Barney hands over the mission's payment to Sandra, entrusting her with the task of restoring Villena's former glory. After their heartfelt goodbyes, Barney and the Expendables celebrate their hard-won victory at Tool's Lounge. The team's celebration is made more wholesome with the return of a recovering and repentant